So, secondly, I just wanted to bring up that I'm going back to Thailand just for a couple of days. I'm flying in and out of Bangkok. I got a really cheap flight ticket. It's amazing how affordable it is to go there because there are flights between Bangkok and Hanoi every day, several flights. And so it's just on a visa run, and for 3 days, I'm just going to try to finish this, get as close as I can. Because actually, uh, earlier in this year, if you look at my older videos, I talked about reading the Bible, and I started the book of Genesis on Friday, April 13th of this year. I sat down in one sitting, I listened to all of Genesis, and it was really an interesting way to spend the evening. I had the night off, and it was just searching YouTube, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like to read this whole thing in one block. But then I kept doing it, returning to blogs, and it took me a while, but I went back to Bangkok, as you can see in my last video in August, a couple months ago, and my only mission there was to find this, because I knew they had a King James Bible somewhere downtown. So I downloaded the map and I made a plan to go find it. And that night I brought that book home and I finished reading the New Testament, because I had been reading up pretty much all the way to the very end of the New Testament until I got to the shop and I got this. And I read to the end of the New Testament, and I didn't read Revelation, because I had read that twice at the beginning. It's I wanted to try a different order, just a slightly different order. But anyway, as soon as I brought this home, I thought, I wanted to go back to James Joyce or the Buddhist Bible or something. But I thought, I just couldn't, it's just so nice to hold one in my hands after reading one entirely online. Isn't that odd to think? That I read the entire King James Bible just on screens, on my iPad and on my computer. That's how I was able to get all of the Word of God. But anyway, I wanted to share my progress on my fourth journey, because I'm not leaving for Thailand for another few days. And I just finished the book of Hosea, right here. And so now I'm in the part of the Old Testament where it's just very short minor prophets. Maybe Zechariah is a bit longer, or Zephaniah. And then by the time I get back to Thailand, I'll be back in the New Testament, but probably still in the Gospels, because those take a little while to read. It's hard to read the entire Gospel in one sitting, or one Gospel in one sitting. But I have, it's interesting, it takes about 2 hours to read if you just read it at a normal pace. And so I've seen at least one movie rendition, I think, of the book of John, or the Gospel, not the book of John, the Gospel of John. And I think that is just a verbatim reading of the KJV, kind of like how you see Shakespeare. I was trying to get into Shakespeare a while ago, and James Earl Jones, King Lear, and it was interesting, but I just didn't have the brain power for it. I guess it was at the end of the week, it was last weekend, and I just needed to zone out for a while. But as I explained to people, a major reason, if not the main reason, that I keep up with reading, especially dense old English like this, and complicated books like James Joyce and all that, is because I've learned there's some attrition as you travel. You forget how to say things, you lose language. And a great way of keeping that is returning to classics, to stuff that you've been reading since you were very young, or stuff that has a lot of cultural meaning. Just as I encourage people from any culture to study the great works, poets, and music and writers of their countries. So, regarding my progress, I wanted just to say a couple of things. I really, I found new meaning in certain books so far, like Ezra and Nehemiah. I never really sat down and figured out what was going on in those. Rebuilding the temple and rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, and wondering what that really means when you consider how often Jerusalem is later destroyed, and how the people keep turning their backs on God no matter what. Just as the people in the wilderness, as they were following the Ark of the Covenant, and Moses couldn't bring them to the promised land because they still had idolatry and sin among them. Like with the major prophets, like with Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, you see that they talk about in great detail, like the bones rising out of the earth and coming to full flesh again, the lion and the lamb resting together, the child playing with dangerous animals and all that, the new heavens and the new earth, the eternal kingdom of the world that would stretch forth from the New Jerusalem. Well, I guess that's mostly in Isaiah, but in a bit in all of them, including Ezekiel has some great paradise visions, or visions of the world to come for the faithful. But in these later books, and in the earlier books, a lot of the older books of the Old Testament, or the smaller books of the Old Testament, you do see a very angry and jealous God. And it's taken me 4 times through now, but this 4th time I really get the meaning of God's anger in a way, which it's kind of maybe a weird thing to say, but and wondering how that understanding, the real interpretation of the God of the Bible, which has been so maligned and mischaracterized for so long, how that really changes everything in perspective. I was just reading today, as I got through the end of the book of Ezekiel, there's a dream that he has of a carving, and there's cherubim and palm trees. And it occurred to me, the first time I saw a palm tree out in nature, let's say, was when I was 24 years old in the Philippines. Now I see them every day. I've been seeing them every day for 3 years. Everywhere I go, I see palm trees. But I still look, and it feels a little bit like paradise. And cherubim, the idea of a human form with wings, that comes directly from the Bible, and that totally contradicts nonsense that I've heard that, this idea of angels as human forms with wings is a Middle Ages invention. It's amazing, just as people lie about what's in the Bible to promote some faith or some doctrine, people equally lie about what's in the Bible ignorantly because they want to prove that it's wrong. Anyway, I'll let you know as soon as I finish, and I'll probably record in Bangkok, but I have no plans on eating another scorpion. Over and out.